Ready? All right. Good evening. Welcome to everybody. Always so blessed to have my friends here with me tonight, here in person, and also my friends watching us at home. So let's open up now back to Judges chapter 15. We're going to be finishing up chapter 15 and hopefully getting on into 16 a little bit. So let's open up to Judges 15 and also open up our time with the word of prayer. Gracious, loving Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of this day. Thank you for this beautiful evening you have blessed us with here in our area. And thank you for the gift of this time to be able to come, dear God, and study your word. So bless us now, dear God. Bless us for coming out here together, being together wherever we are, and just continue to lead us and guide us into this time of study as only you and you alone can do. And we ask this as always in your holy, your mighty, and very precious name. Amen. All right, if you will, you remember last week we started working our way through chapter 15. We talked about how Samson made the decision to go back to get that Philistine woman who he still believes to be his wife. And if you remember, her father refuses to let Samson go to see her in her room because he truly believed that Samson had actually done more than just rejected her. He truly believed that Samson hated. That's the word that's used. It hated. But it also means the word divorce. So he believes that Samson hated her and divorced her. The thing is, he had to believe this. Remember, we talked about the fact that if he actually did give his daughter in marriage to Samson's best man, which, don't forget, it is possible that he didn't actually end up doing it, but if he did, if he had given her away while she was still married to Samson, then he would be helping her to commit the sin of the act of adultery. In response, we talked about how the woman's father offered Samson her younger, prettier sister. But before we judge him, let's remember we talked about the fact he probably did it not because he was just trying to get rid of another daughter, but he was more afraid of Samson. It was out of fear of Samson that Samson would get angry and do something to him for giving his daughter away. Then we talked about the fact that Samson does get angry, but he doesn't take it out on the man, on the father. Instead, he took those 300 foxes. And remember, we talked about most likely it's not foxes, it's actually jackals. The same word can apply there. And jackals are much more prominent in that area than foxes were. But he takes the jackals, ties their tails together, lights a torch between them, and then sets them out, setting fire on the grain in the wheat fields. Not only those, but the vineyards, the olive orchards, they're all on fire, destroying not just their food, but also their income. And as a result, the Philistines burned Samson's wife and father-in-law in retaliation for what Samson did. And then from that, Samson responds with his own revenge by bringing about a great slaughter upon the Philistines. And then the thing is, we pointed out that one of the things that should stand out to us is the fact that everybody in the story keeps blaming somebody else. They keep trying to pass the buck, blaming somebody else or everybody else for what's happened. No one is taking the credit for their part in this. Now, what I want to do is pick up again, even though we read this last week, I want to pick up verse 9 and go all the way through verse 17. Then the Philistines came up and encamped in Judah and made a raid on Lehi. The men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" They said, "We have come up to bind Samson to do to him as he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom, and they said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then have you done to us?" And he replied, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." Remember, once again, they did it to me, so I just did it back to them. That same mentality. And they said to him, "We have come down to bind you, so that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines." And Samson answered them, "Swear to me that you yourselves will not attack me." They said to him, "No, we will only bind you and give you into their hands. we will not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that has caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. Then he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached down and took it, and with it he killed 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey I have slain 1,000 men. And when he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and that place was called Ramath-Lehi, which means place of the jawbone, basically, or where the jawbone's gone away. Now, if you remember, like I said, we covered most of 9 through 13, or through 12 last week, and we talked about how that's one of the saddest parts of the story. Because we talked about how, it is the tribe of Judah who comes to get him. This is the first tribe chosen by God to go in and take the promised land. A tribe that, even though they weren't most powerful, they were still probably the most respected, the leading tribe. But they're satisfied, remember, with that Philistine rule or Saul having dominion, complete control over them. But worst of all, we talked about what makes it sad is the fact that once this, for once this great tribe, they could have gotten behind God's chosen judge and could have used him, could have followed him and defeated those Philistines that were there. Because there were 3,000 of them, okay? But instead of choosing to side with God and with Samson, they still side with the Philistines, and they bind him, they tie him up, and bring them to him. And sadly, it's another example of that continued social and religious decline of the people of Israel, more willing to resist their unwillingness to resist their oppressors. It's also the fact they're still willing to just turn their back on God and to turn their back on God's chosen judge. Now pick up with me at verse 13 here. 13, 14, and 15. Now when you look at verse 13, 14, and 15, here the authors are revealing 2 very specific things that should stand out to us. First off, look at the last part of verse 13. Now, the last part of verse 13, we're specifically told that the Judeans tied Samson up with what?
New ropes.
How many?
2.
2 brand new ropes. Now, there's a specific reason why the writers make sure that we know this. They don't just say they tie him up. The writer, the narrator, makes sure to know that they use 2 brand new ropes. And there's a reason behind that, which we're going to get to in a little bit. Now, as we see, they tied him up with these 2 brand new ropes. And when they bring him down, the Philistines, they see Samson, and they begin to shout out cries of victory over their enemy. And what happens, once again, what is the first thing that happens to Samson?
The Spirit of the Lord came upon him.
All right, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson. The question is, how does it come upon Samson? How does the Spirit of the Lord come upon Samson? Now, my New Revised says the Spirit rushed upon him. But the NIV, and I know Mr. Harold and Sandy's New Living Translation, along with the complete Jewish Bible, and maybe the King James Version, what do you have? That it came not rushing on him, but it came with what?
Mightily upon him.
Mightily?
Powerfully.
That it came with power. It came powerfully upon him. And as a result, Samson is then able to do what?
Get free.
Okay, but how does he get free?
He snaps the ropes.
He breaks the ropes as if they are what?
Flax.
Flax. They're nothing, okay? See, this is why the authors make sure to tell us that point of the story about the 2 new ropes. They make sure to point out that Samson was tied up with them. Why? You see, old ropes over time can become what?
Weak.
Weak, rotted out. I can remember even the rope, the twine that we used to bale hay with when I was a kid. Over time, if it got wet, it was nothing to grab a bale of hay on that rope. and they snap because they've gotten too wet. Rot it out. So the thing is, old rope can become frayed or rotten, making them easy to break. But they make sure to let us know that these were brand new ropes that would hold any other man but Samson. But more importantly, they want us to know what about these ropes?
They were probably unbreakable by
They were
human.
unbreakable. But once again, what's this about? The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. They want us to know that these were not just old, easy-to-break ropes. 2 brand new ropes. Nobody else could have done this. But they want us to know this because it highlights what? Because once again, it highlights who is the one that is the real power.
God's power.
God is. God's the real power. Even though it is brand new ropes, so the thing is, when God's Spirit comes upon us, what can happen?
Anything.
Anything. Nothing can stop us if we trust in Him. If we allow the Spirit to powerfully, truly come upon us, we can do anything then with God. Now that's the first thing. But there's the second thing. What's the second thing that the authors also want us to make sure that we know? There in verse 15.
That he was unarmed.
Okay? But now he's not unarmed.
Well, he picked up the jawbone of the ass.
All right. The second thing is that Samson defeated the Philistines with a, what kind of jawbone?
Fresh.
Huh?
Of a donkey.
Of a donkey. But what kind? It's another word that's used.
Fresh.
Fresh. Is everybody have
Fresh.
fresh jawbone?
Yeah.
What do you got, Sandy, in the New Living?
I don't have anything.
What's a
about
new jawbone?
A new jawbone? All right, the thing is, it normally says a fresh jawbone of a donkey. Now, there's
Oh, I'm sorry. Ours says of a recently killed.
Recently
Okay.
killed. Okay, recently killed.
Okay.
Donkey, okay. Now, the thing is, they point this out for 2 specific reasons. First off, what is it that Samson is really using? Samson's really using what?
A weapon.
He's using a weapon. But the thing is, he's using the jawbone of a donkey against what?
1,000.
Not just but these thousand Philistines are carrying what?
Swords and
Spears. He's using an inadequate, insufficient weapon. It's a jawbone of a donkey. While they're carrying, most likely, true, certain weapons of death. Swords and spears. And he defeats these swords, these thousands carrying swords and spears, shields. And he defeats them with the jawbone of a donkey. All right? But also the second thing, Samson's also done what now at this point? Remember now, who is Samson? Samson is a what?
Judge.
Huh? He's a judge, but remember, he's also a what?
A Jew.
He's also a Jew, but he's also a what?
I can't remember the name of
I
it.
forgot the word too.
Starts with an N.
Nazarite.
A Nazarite.
That's right.
And what are Nazarites not supposed to touch?
A carcass.
Anything dead.
Anything dead. He has once again touched a part of an animal corpse, a dead body, just like he did with that lion, okay? Which we know is a direct violation of his vow as a Nazarite. But see, it's knowing about these 2 things, it's important. It's important because it shows us what? You see, it shows us that once again, who's truly at work here?
God.
God. It is God who is using Samson, along with the jawbone of a donkey, against other weapons of war and death, to bring about his purpose once again. But also, once again, it shows that even when you and I, we do something like Samson, and we make a choice. We make decisions against the choices that God wants us to make. Even if those choices come up suddenly. I mean, we're just told that he breaks those ropes, grabs them on. That's probably the first thing he saw.
He had to have something to fight
He
with.
had something to fight with, and that's the first thing he saw. So suddenly, even when those choices come upon us suddenly, and we do them without even thinking about what we are doing or what we have done, God can still do what?
forgive you for picking it up and
He can-
fight with you.
He can forgive you, yeah, but he can still continue to also do what?
Use
Protect
you.
you.
To use us. We can protect us, but still to use us for his purpose and for his glory. Just as he's doing with Samson. Samson, grabbing that, like you said, I believe he just saw it there on the ground. Now, did God place it there? We'll wait and ask him when we get to heaven. Okay? That'd be one of those questions we can add to our list. God, did you put that jawbone there on purpose, or what? Or was it just there? But the bottom line, even when you and I have to make a choice, if we are willing to let the Spirit of the Lord come upon us, and even if we end up messing up, God can still use us. Just like he does, he continues to do that with Samson. But then now, follow it up with verse 16. Because after Samson defeats the Philistine, he then makes the following statement. Now, the New Revised Standard Version says it like this. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. Now, that does follow very close with y'all's New Living Translation version and the complete Jewish Bible. They talk, all three talk, I mean, both of those talk about heaps, piled on heaps, or I piled them in heaps. What does the King James Version say?
With the jawbone of a donkey, I've made heaps on heaps.
Yeah, that's the New Living Translation.
With the jawbone of an ass, I have slain 1,000 men.
Okay, but he doesn't talk about heaps upon heaps.
Yeah, it's got heaps upon heaps.
Okay,
Then with the jawbone.
but I really like the New International Version. Is that what Mr. David has? I think he's got the NIV. I love what the NIV translation. NIV says this: with the donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them.
Yes, that's what I got.
I like the NIV. With the donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them, which can be understood. It's understood because the Hebrew words for heap and for donkey sound are written out very much the same. There's just one little difference between the two. So it'd be easy to understand how they could write, I've made donkeys out of them. Okay? And does anybody have with the jawbone of an ass, mass upon ass? Mass upon mass. That was another one I had. A little slip of the tongue there, excuse me. But it's with this statement by Samson. Once again, there's two specific things that should stand out to us. First off, once again, how many Philistines did Samson kill?
1,000.
Now, most likely it wasn't an exact 1,000. 1,000, something like that is a large, huge, complete number. It's a complete number. How many of the tribe of Judah came and bound Samson and brought him to the Philistines? How many were the tribe of Judah that brought him? We just talked about it.
Of course we did.
Wasn't there 7?
Now this would be there in, look at verse 11.
3,000.
3,000. So there were 1,000 Philistines, 3,000 of the tribe of Judah. Once again, we have another reminder then of the continued spiritual faithless decline of the Israelites. They outnumbered the Philistines. And they have Samson in their corner. And they still continue to do what the Philistines are telling them to do. Because it's like they just don't care anymore. But once again, Samson, remember, it's not just about him being a reflection of Israel and how they act. Remember, Samson's story is also a reflection of God. Because as we're going to see, they might have given up on God, but God still hasn't given up on them. But there's a second thing with this statement that also should stand out to us. That with this statement, what has Samson also just done? Look at the statement again. And what is Samson also done at this point? What's he just done with that statement?
He's proved that
Bragging a little bit.
that the Jews don't have to bow down to the Philistines.
He's proven that. But the worst thing of all is the fact he's still taking what?
Right.
Credit. He's still taking credit, putting, giving credit to himself for killing these 10,000 Philistines, okay? And this is important. This is important concerning Samson that we're going to be looking at in just a few minutes, okay? So, I mean, he still is kind of taking credit here, bragging about, look, also, because, he doesn't say, because notice it doesn't say, with the jawbone of a donkey, God has used me to slay. It just says, I have slain 1,000 Philistines. So once again, not even mentioning God here. All right, now join me then. Okay, now let's pick up and look at verses 18 through 20. Let's finish up chapter 15 here. By then he was very thirsty. And he called on the Lord, saying, You have granted this great victory by the hand of your servant. And am I now to die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? So God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came from it. When he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore it was named En-Hakkore, which is at Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Now, as we enter into this last section of chapter 15, what is the first thing that we should take note of? This is the first time that Samson has done what?
He led Israel.
Huh?
Praise the Lord.
Did we?
Ask God.
Okay, this is the first time he's cried out to God. This is the first time that he has actually cried out asking God for help. But in calling out to God, what is it that Samson is actually doing for the first time? Well, see, as we know from what we've been studying about Samson, from the story itself, remember now, every time Samson finds himself in a situation where he has to fight, what is it that always comes upon him?
Spirit of the Lord.
The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, usually powerfully, with great power, as we read back in verse 14. The thing is, though, when it comes upon to the Spirit of the Lord coming upon Samson, there is not one time where Samson gives us a clue about what? There's not one time when the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him that Samson ever does what? At none of these times...
Acknowledges
he doesn't
that.
acknowledge it. He doesn't give us a clue that he even knows that it's exactly happened to him. You never know anything. It's never clear if Samson is aware that it's God working through him. And that's what I was talking about back with verse 16. We just don't know. Samson never once gives credit to God. Because for Samson, it's always been about what?
Himself.
Himself and his what? His desire for?
Women.
Huh?
Women.
Women, and for women. Yeah, and for what's the other big one?
Power.
Huh? Power, and what's the other big one? Is one even more powerful than that? How about revenge?
Oh, yeah.
Remember, he's always about revenge. It's always about himself and the revenge that he believes that he, should get. Just as we talked about, you remember back in verse 7 last week, the original Hebrew text reveals to us what Samson was thinking. That as far as Samson's actually concerned, his actions, his seeking revenge are all justified. That he has the right to get the revenge. Once again, he's always made it about himself. But in verse 18, this is the first time Samson gives any kind of credit to God. Now, once again, this is the New Revised Standard. You have granted this great victory by the hand, by the strength, I think the New Living has, by the strength of your servant. But once again, did you notice what Samson did in calling out to God? He does it again. He did what? He still does what? Pats himself on the back. For his part in it as well. But what is really sad about all this is the reason why Samson finally calls out to God. Which is what? He thinks that he's about to what?
Die of thirst.
To die of thirst. He's not calling out because he thinks he's about to die because he's been wounded, or that he is just so greatly exhausted that he cannot go on anymore. It's all about the fact he thinks that he's about to die of thirst. He's right next to the city of Lehi. But he's going to die of thirst before he, so he's just going to stand there and what? Wallow in his pity. But as we see, God responds by answering Samson's cry, okay? But what should really stand out to us is the fact that we are not told this short few verses here so that we can learn about the name of the place where this has happened. This is not about teaching you and me that in hot core A means the spring of the one who called. Okay? See, let us once again never forget, first off, the life and actions of Samson are a reflection of the people of Israel. As you may remember, in all the previous judge stories, who is the one who always cries out to God? Israel, the people. The Hebrew people are the ones that cry out, not the judges. But this time a judge is crying out. And it's from this that we can then see how the story of Samson is also a reflection of who? It's also a reflection of God and who God is. As we see in response to Samson's cry for help, just like the cries for help that came from the Hebrew people, God still did what? He what? He answered.
He answered the call.
He answered the call. God is still faithful to answer the call. Same thing for us. Even when we don't deserve it, when we do cry out in earnest plea to God, God is faithful to help us, to provide for us. All right? Now, the thing is this, one commentator used this as a way of showing us that God is faithful in answering our prayers. And it's a great way you can see it, understand that. But I want to tell y'all, for me, and I'd already been thinking about this when I came upon it in another commentary, this story is much more than about how God answers prayers. For me, it does this. It shows us that even when God does not always reveal himself, that when God works in hidden ways, that God is still always what?
There.
He's always there. Remember, the thing is, God has not hardly been mentioned at all in the story of Samson. But apart from the fact that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Even when God is hidden, God is always there, ready, willing, and more than able to help us. There are times when we do not see God, but God always sees us. Okay? But more importantly, it tells us this about God. That when God calls someone to accomplish, to bring about his will and his purpose, to bring about his plans in this world, that when God empowers somebody like he does with Samson to do something for him, God will also do what? God will still what? Provide. God will provide everything that we need to get the job done. That's what God does for us. That's what Samson can remind us of. That even when we're unfaithful like him, our God is still faithful. Okay? But then look at verse 20. Now, we are in this verse. We're in this verse told that Samson then judged Israel how many years? 20 years. Which tells us one very specific thing about Samson. That Samson is actually a what?
Judge.
A judge. He's actually a judge chosen by God. Now this is important because there are some people who will tell you, some scholars who believe Samson's not an actual judge. And they say that because, now once we get through Samson and get to the last part of this book, he's the last judge. But we still got, what about 4 or 5 more chapters to go through. And they're not about judges. Some believe that he's not an actual judge because of 2 reasons. First off, that he only is used by God, as we're told back in chapter 14, verse 4. Remember when Samson desires to marry the Philistine woman from Timnah, and his parents are begging him, why can't you marry a Jewish woman? Remember, we found out that this was all coming about because it was part of God's plan. That all this came about through Samson because God was only doing as he said in the verse. For he, God, was seeking a pretext to act against the Philistines. Or as it says in the complete Jewish Bible, I love this, that all this came from Adonai, who was seeking grounds for a quarrel, a fight with the Philistines. See, some people believe he really wasn't a judge. He was just an instrument to bring about devastation upon the Philistines for punishment. Some will say he's not a judge. But the second thing, they believe he's not a judge because what's been left out of verse 20? Now, you don't find it in the story of Jephthah, but in the other major judges, when it comes to the end, and they ruled as a judge for 40 years, and what's we're told about the rest of the judges, there was then what? Do you remember? There is peace
and
in
harmony.
the land.
Peace and harmony in the land. That's not stated. So a lot of people believe that he was not actually a judge. But I believe he was. Because we're told there that he did judge for 20 years. So this is the end of chapter 15 then. This story of his encounter with the Philistines. Now let's move into chapter 16. And we're probably only going to be able to cover verses 1, 2, and 3. So let's pick up here. So join me here, verse 1 of chapter 16. Once Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute and went into her. The Gazites were told, Samson has come here. So they circled around and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They kept quiet all night thinking, let us wait until the light of the morning. Then we will kill him. But Samson lay only until midnight. Then at midnight he rose up, took hold of the doors of the city gate and the two posts, pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. All right, let's stop here. Now, as we see, Samson's in the city of Gaza, sleeping once again with a what?
A prostitute.
But not just any prostitute. What kind of prostitute? This is a Philistine prostitute. He's got something for these Philistine women. I don't know.
They're good,
Now here, huh?
they're good looking.
I know they must be.
You know, nobody wants to go with an ugly girl.
So they must have some good-looking women, those Philistines. But now here's the thing. You gotta understand, first off, a couple of things going on here. The city of Gaza. Now, it was considered, it was a part of, I should say, it was one of the 5 main cities or territories that made up the land of the Philistines, divided into 5 different areas. Gaza was one of them. But this is the city. It lies directly in the heart of the Philistine territory. He's right in the middle of it.
Of course he is.
Okay? Now, as we see, Samson, like I said, apparently has an obsession with Philistine women. But what is it that should really stand out to us concerning Samson and this woman? Again, it's in the way that we're told that Samson did what? Samson, there's something very specific about what Samson does.
Well, he told her that his strength lied in his
No,
hand.
that's Delilah in the next story. This is not Delilah we're talking about here.
Rose at
What?
midnight?
Huh?
Rose at midnight?
No, look there at verse 1. Once Samson went to Gaza, what did he do?
Spent the night.
But he does something else first.
Oh. He went
What does he do concerning the woman? He
Saw her and then
saw
went in.
her. Remember?
Mine doesn't.
Remember the Philistine woman that he wanted to marry? He wanted to marry because she was what?
Beautiful.
Pleasing in his
Sight. See, mine doesn't have that.
Oh, okay. Well, in the original thing, I checked. I always go back to the
That's
complete
fine.
Jewish Bible.
That's why I couldn't.
And the thing is, it talks about how he sees her or he saw her. The people, the Hebrew people, continue to do evil in the sight of God because of the choices they made concerning the sinful life with these heathens that they saw and they wanted. She was pleasing in his sight. This prostitute is too. But once again, let's remember, the story of Samson is a reflection of both God and the people of Israel. See, we see how the story of Samson always pointing to the vastness of God's love for the Hebrew people. It remains constant, faithless love he has for the Hebrew people. But see, the thing is, in Judges chapter 2, verse 17, and in Judges chapter 8, verse 33, God has specifically told the Hebrew people to not do something. Now, don't go back and look it up. But what he tells them is, do not prostitute yourself with false gods. Once again, Samson does what he wants to do. Just like the Hebrew people. Not thinking about God. Only thinking about himself. Then we get into verses 2 and 3. Now the men of Gaza find out that Samson is there. But instead of charging in to take him and kill him while he's asleep, they decide they're going to wait until morning. And they're going to lie at wait where for him?
At the city gate.
Very good, at the city gate. You see, it's believed that the city of Gaza only had one gate. Which meant that they believed they had Samson what? Cornered, trapped, cornered. They think he's now trapped within the walls of their city, and because of that they now believe they don't have to be in a hurry. They can just wait, and they'll kill him in the morning. But as we see at verse 3, Samson decides not to wait until morning. He gets up during the middle of the night and not only leaves the city, but for good measure, he pulls up the doors and the posts of the city gate, and he carries them on his shoulders to the top of the hill that stands in the front of the city of Hebron. Now, what's missing here? There's something specific that's missing. This time, we're not told about what coming upon him.
The Spirit of the Lord.
The Spirit of the Lord. So, is it just a given? Or, was this actually how strong he was? Maybe it was staying upon him now. But here's the other thing. When they measure between Gaza, the city of Gaza, and the city of Hebron, they have discovered that it's 40 miles away. See, you know this. We're not talking about a doorpost like ours right there. It's not. We're talking about stone pillar posts, and these gates that he is carrying on his shoulder, and he carries them for a distance of 40 miles.
Wow.
Isn't that something? That's how strong he is.
40 miles.
But it's here that we come to another sad part found in the story of Samson. Now, in case you didn't know, the city of Hebron is actually just 19 miles southwest of the city of Jerusalem. Which means that he's where? He's in the land of the Israelites. He's out of the Philistine territory. He's in there. But here's the thing. All right? Hebron is located within the land that belongs to what tribe, do you think? We just talked about it.
The Israelites?
Not all of Israel. What specific tribe has just come
Philistines?
Huh? Not the Philistines. He's gone into Israel now. But he's in the territory that belongs to the tribe of Judah. Remember, we just talked about Judah. That's where he is. Now, what about that makes this another sad part within the story of Samson? Well, here's the thing. Think about it.
So close.
With the only gate for the city of Gaza completely torn down, removed, 40 miles away, that means that the city is now what?
Open.
Defense.
Open, it's what?
To be invaded.
It's vulnerable. It's ready to be attacked.
Attacks.
But once again, there's no response from who?
Israel.
Israel, from Judah. There is no response from Judah once again about seizing the opportunity to go back with Samson and attack the city. No attempt by the tribe of Judah to break the rule, the Messiah, that the Philistines are still holding over them. And as we see, there's no reaction from Judah, nothing but silence. Because I think the sad part is this, just like it is in the world today, sometimes people, they just get comfortable where they are. Even if they're living in sin, they just let things lie.
Would it have made a difference if Samson had rallied the troops,
Maybe so. Maybe Samson could have done
instead
that.
of being looking at all the women?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe Samson should have called it to him. I don't think it might. We don't know. But all we know is this. He goes, he takes these gates that protect the city. It's open. All Judah has to do is rally around Samson, go back, and the city is won. But still, there is nothing that is done. So let's stop here. Because it's in verse 4. That's when we get to the story of Delilah. Yep. Samson and Delilah. Okay? And so, I'll be honest with you, we're not going to take too long with this.
Oh,
Because we know it. I'm just going to maybe hit some highlights with it as we get into it. The interesting part is when it comes to the end of it, to his death. So let's stop here. You at home, thanks for being with us tonight. Do appreciate it so much. So come back and join us. Once again, Judges 16, verse 4 is where we'll pick up next week. Until we're together again, take care and God bless and goodbye.